Well, this is my spoiler-free review for 2019's Pet Sematary, and don't worry, I won't do what that second trailer did and, ruin the frickin' movie. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler-free review for Pet Sematary, the new version. I'm kind of excited to dive into this and talk about it, but this being a spoiler-free review is going to be kind of difficult. So I'm excited because Laura's going to come in here later, we're going to record our spoiler talk, and right there I'm going to feel that freedom to dive more and talk about the differences between this version and the 1989 version. So I'm more excited to dive into it that way in that spoiler talk, but I did want to get a spoiler-free review for you out there. Now, if you're one of those unfortunate people who saw trailer number 2, so the big, huge, major difference between the 89 version and this version, and you know about that twist, let me just say this. Wow, I am sorry for you. And that trailer number 2 didn't just show that one little twist, it showed a lot of stuff. If it was me, and I saw that second trailer before I went into the movie, I would not have enjoyed it as much. I mean, more than half of the tension that I even experienced on the big screen would have just been gone. And I would have been incredibly, incredibly mad. So if you saw trailer number 2, I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a C+. It would be totally average, and it wouldn't carry the same weight and same tension, and then you should just wait till it comes out on Netflix and watch it that way. But if you're like me, and you haven't watched that second trailer, and you don't know that big twist that's coming in a little bit later, then I'm going to go ahead and give it a B-, which is only still just like a little bit more above average, but I feel like it added a whole different level of tension. Me going into this having not seen that trailer, not knowing what they were going to do different, it actually gave weight to scenes that, it made them a little bit more stronger, a little bit more powerful, whereas if I had seen that trailer, the wind would have been right out of the sails. I watched that second trailer when I got home. My mind was boggled at what they decided to show in that. Okay, passionate rant about that over. Diving into this movie, overall, I thought it was pretty good. I definitely... Cody Leach and I were kind of going back and forth, messaging each other after this movie, and I think I agree with something he said in those messages. I think the first half of the film is definitely better than the second half of the film. I think the first half of the film does a really good job building tension, and it answers some things that I had kind of wondered. Like, you go back to the 1989 version, and you're like, over a freaking dead cat, Judd takes Lewis up there to bring the stupid thing back to life. And I say it that way because Judd knows better. He really does. He knows the story of the soldier who came home from World War II and was buried up there and comes back all possessed and crazy and all that stuff. He has the story of his dog. The dude knew better. And, there was always a part of me that was like, why, if you knew so much better, did you do that? What I liked about this 2019 version is it made effort to talk about that, to dig into that a little more and give an explanation about that. And I liked the explanation that it gave. So I thought that right there was interesting. The other thing kind of interesting about this one was it's a little bit of a shift in focus, where the first one is very much a human element, and it's looking at their grief and them being absolutely driven by grief. So it looks at Lewis and how grief drove him to do the things that he did, and how, oh my gosh, I don't even want to imagine that. This one takes a little bit of a different approach, and it seems like the focus is a little bit more on the supernatural trying to break through. So there's an element of that I thought was cool, because it dove a little bit more into some of the lore behind, the burial grounds and the stuff that was up there and these different creatures and stuff. And so it was kind of cool that it set that up and gave a little bit more information. But then at the same time, it didn't dive into all this stuff that it was setting up. I mean, it definitely did dive into some, but not into all of it, like somebody like me who loves sci-fi and fantasy and is like, now that's an interesting point. Wait, why didn't we do more of that then? Now look, I think there's something to be said for this thing's perspective of taking a look at the supernatural and the supernatural trying to break through into our realm, and it was kind of interesting watching that in this film. But then the 1989 version definitely hit the human emotion with grief. And that was a very powerful thing, that grief drove Lewis mad. It's why he buried his wife at the end and brought her back. It's why he buried his child. Grief caused all this crazy justification in his head, and it was really heavy and emotional that way. So this one takes more of that supernatural approach, whereas this one takes more of that I guess, human emotional approach. What would have been more interesting is if this one mixed it a little bit better, because I like the approach that the 89 version did, where it was definitely grief being all-consuming, but I also liked this approach of the supernatural trying to break through. So I think where 2019 sort of missed it was doing a nice little balance between Lewis's grief really messing with his mind and his justifications. It's there to some degree, but not as strong as the 89 version. So if they had mixed it a little bit better and done a little bit more of a balance between the supernatural element that they did in this that I thought was really cool and the grief element that really drove Lewis kind of to this point, I think that would have been really interesting. If you haven't seen trailer number 2, I would give this a solid B-, because it's still going to have some tension and some weight, and because of some of its nods to the original, and then when it twists things, you're like, oh, interesting. If you have seen trailer number 2, just wait for freaking Netflix. There's really no point to spend more money and see it on the big screen. I am being honest about how I felt about that second trailer. So what did you think if you happen to see it? Do you agree? Disagree? Let's talk in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, trailer reaction, theological analysis, ranking video, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.